NFL Combine winners and losers. So we can go kind of whatever direction you want to go here, Zach, and people go ahead and let us know in the chat and in the comments what you think as well. We would love to hear from you on who you thought were good and impressive in the NFL Combine this weekend. I have some names. I mainly focused on the players. I didn't focus on the teams as much just because I didn't see like a ton of players from one team excel. I had many thoughts on Penn State players, but I had just as many winners as I did losers for Penn State. So it's like, I don't think I can call Penn State a winner. I don't think I can call them a loser either. But I'll let you go first, Zach. Give me let's just go back and forth. Give me one of your winners really fast.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that stood out to me, Chop Robinson running a 4.48 in the 40.
Yeah.
As a D end.
I looked that up. That's the fifth best among defensive linemen who weigh 250 pounds or more since 2003.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Woo. Fifth fastest. Man, can you imagine being that big and running that fast?
No.
Like, I'd destroy stuff. He does destroy stuff. Duh.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of his job.
He's going to destroy some offensive line. Yeah. It kind of makes me sad for Chop. I was thinking of that because, he obviously, didn't get the full season this year. So that was obviously hurt him. But, he was a big reason why Michigan, in the second half basically just went to running the ball as much as possible because they knew they weren't going to be able to take care of that pass rush. So one of the guys, I will stick with Penn State here. I'll get my Penn State guy out of the way really fast. Theo Johnson from Penn State, the tight end. This is kind of a down tight end class. Brock Bowers is really good, obviously. However, there's not a lot of whole other really good tight ends. Cade Stover did okay, but I don't think he really flashed all that much. And Brevin Spann-Ford, I actually have him on my losers list, so get to him later if we want. But I think Theo Johnson, he's a physical specimen, man. He has some really good measurables, and on top of his good measurables, like he tested really well with his times. I think like going into the combine, he was kind of looked at as like a day 3 kind of guy, maybe early day 3, but I think he might have played himself into day 2 here. The guy had a 4.57 40 time as a tight end. He's he's 6'6". His weight, like he's kind of underweight, but not really. Like he's 259. So, this is a guy that he has good weight. He has good size. He has good, measurable or athleticism with some of the testing that he did. And he was just like, if you look in the percentiles, he was up there in almost every single area. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Theo Johnson go day 2 in the NFL draft this year.
Yeah, I think I saw, I think it's, I forget the acronym, what the acronym stands for, the RAS. It was a perfect score for Theo Johnson, which is just like, I think he was, like if in terms of all tight ends that this one company have evaluated, he is number 1 in the history of the test that they run. So like that's a good pick for a winner right there, JR. Well done.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get to you, Brian, put here, and I think it's funny, combine winner, Ohio State. There are a lot of Buckeyes who would normally be at the combine, but instead they're coming back to Columbus for a title. So they won the combine by not sending very many players to the combine because they're all coming back to the team instead. I like the way you think, Brian.
That's fair. On the flip side, the combine was kind of a loser because Marvin Harrison didn't even show for his interview.
Yeah. He didn't show for that. Caleb Williams was the first guy ever to not do his medical or something.
That screams like red flag right there. But
yeah. I couldn't really do a winner or loser for Caleb Williams because he didn't do anything. I wanted to try to find something, but it's I feel like I can't put him as a winner or loser if he doesn't do anything. He had a good interview, I guess. He was, charismatic there, but
I'll go with I think an unconventional winner. That was Cooper DeJean. And his interview didn't work out. He's still recovering from a fractured tibia. but he was able to report that his recovery is on schedule, which I think is huge for him because I think Mel Kiper has him ranked as the 17th best. I think in his mock draft, he's 17th overall. And anything that suggests that he's going to be ready to go and maybe work out before the draft, it's huge for him because I think that will just confirm, okay, yeah, he's still a top corner. He's still going to be on our board. So that was big for Cooper DeJean out of Iowa.
Yeah, and he has to heal up from that injury in order to be drafted high enough. So you're right to be able to say that things are on schedule and things are looking good. That's huge for him. Another winner I had, and this was a guy that I was vying for at the beginning of the season. I think he's a really, really good player, and I'm glad he did well at the combine. But Max Melton, the cornerback from Rutgers, his brother plays for Green Bay, I think. Bo Melton, I think.
Bo Melton.
Yeah, I think he plays for Green Bay still. But anyway, he did a phenomenal job on the 40. Great broad jump, great vertical jump. I mean, all these testing numbers, and he needed that too because he's kind of undersized in his weight. He needs to put on a little bit more weight, and he's only 5'11", so he's not the tallest guy either. So for him to be able to test well on those numbers, it's good for him, especially since one of the best parts of his game is playing man coverage, kind of pressing the wide receivers there. If you're not going to be a big cornerback, you have to be able to keep up with guys, even if they're pushing off of you. And to say that he has, a 40 of under 4.4, like, yes, that's what you want. So I think he possibly made himself some good money at the combine, testing really well there. I think he had the best broad jump of the cornerbacks, if I'm not mistaken. It was either best or second best. I can't remember. But just a really, really good day for him.
Yeah. It's funny. Corners, I think, out of the Big Ten had, Mike Sanders still is another one who had a really good day. Yes. Had a really good 20-yard shuttle. I think he's probably solidified himself as a day 2 pick for sure.
Possibly a first rounder.
Yeah, I think so.
Team values him enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he could sneak in. Obviously they're coming into the Big Ten, but Michael Penix had a great day. A lot of people reporting that they thought he was arguably the best thrower. I'll just go one more quarterback. McCarthy had a bit of an up and down day, but what's interesting is a lot of buzz around him is that people view him as maybe a top 3 quarterback overall, which that surprised me. But I think his measurables, I think some of the things he does on film, you're like, oh yeah, that translates to the NFL. But I was surprised because I know his consistency has not always been there. So I thought that was, I'm like, is that a winner, a loser? It's like, well, if you get taken as a top 3 quarterback in the draft, you're winning. But
yeah, I literally put an indifferent section on my notes because I didn't know what to do with JJ McCarthy. And I'm not trying to be a hater, okay? I know everybody's talking about haters are talking about JJ McCarthy. I feel like I am one of the least biased people on JJ where I can say yes, I really like him, or no, I don't really like. I genuinely try to be as unbiased as possible. We're going to have a Michigan fan in the comments saying I'm being biased. That's fine, whatever. But I genuinely try to be as unbiased as possible. I do wonder how much of the top 3 quarterback or top 10 draft pick talk, I do wonder how much of that is kind of generated by teams to try and sway other teams. We saw it last year with Will Levis. People were talking about him as a top 5 pick. Dude didn't go until early second round. What was that, second or third pick or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly where he was, but I know he was early second round.
Early second round, yeah.
Yeah. Now I don't want to see that for JJ. I would never want to see somebody go to the green room or whatever like that and have to sit through it all. I mean, Will Levis is fine. He's making millions of dollars. I don't feel that bad. Right. But still, in that moment, I'm sure it's not fun to go through. But I do wonder, he had a good 60-yard pass. I don't think it was as magical as some people say. It was good. It wasn't, the best pass I've ever seen in the world, but it was good. It was a good pass. I wish he would have ran because I would have loved to see if he did have a 4.4. I wasn't one of those people saying, oh, there's no way he had a 4.4 or anything like that. I think a 4.5 is probably more likely for him. However, I also wouldn't be shocked if he has a 4.4. I just want to see it. So that way we stop talking about it. How fast is JJ McCarthy really? And then, at the end of the day, like, I do think he's probably a top 15 pick. And, it's all about, can he play himself into that top 10? I think the top 3 is, I don't think it's going to happen, but all it takes is one GM to say we want him, and it could happen.
Yeah. I'll just throw this in there, and then I'd love to get more thoughts on the combine in general, but I mentioned this on the other podcast I'm on. I hate how we overvalue quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Cause I'm like, I think if we're overvaluing quarterbacks, I think JJ being in the top 10, top 15, I can understand it. But I think from a pure talent, like, who are the best 32 players going in the first round? I don't know if I would take more than 2 or 3 quarterbacks in this draft. Like, I don't think any of them are Bryce or CJ, or have the raw tools that Anthony Richardson, which that discussion drove me nuts about him last year too. It's like, he can throw 70 yards from his butt.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care. Like, do you remember Jamarcus Russell? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like,
now we're having that conversation with Joe Milton.
Yeah. Oh, well, somebody on Twitter, I loved it. They saw Joe Milton throw, and it's like, some GM's going to see this and make a huge mistake.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like, it does kind of change things with like how good the player is, because do I think JJ McCarthy is a top 10 player in the draft this year? No, I don't. But do I think that he'll be valued as that because of his position? Probably. And again, I'm a Michigan fan on here telling me I'm a hater, but Brian doesn't think so. Brian, I'm sure, loves my analysis here. Brian is saying, or he's telling me I'm completely wrong. Either one. He says McCarthy is overrated. When he lost to Connor Stallions, cheat code, his numbers went way down. And that's true. I did a good amount of like PFF analysis and stuff on him. Like, when he was pressured, he did do much worse when Connor Stallions left. Now, I'm not going to attribute all of his success to Connor Stallions. I do think that he still has, some pretty good arm talent. And I think the mobility is nice. And that's something that GMs and stuff like that are going to like. However, I mean, Zach, if we're being honest here, would that concern you as a GM? Like, to see that, like, this guy that everybody was heralding in the media, that like he was this cheat code or whatever for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then, yes, they win games after he's gone, but JJ's not the same JJ that it once was. I mean, what would you think in that situation, Zach?
Well, I think that, like, that speculation is certainly concerning. And then I think just the fact that his numbers went down against tougher competition. Like, I mean, even just, if I'm reflecting back to I thought he played decently against Alabama and Washington and Ohio State.
Alabama was his best game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, he saved
touchdowns.
Yeah, he saved their bacon against Alabama. But
yeah,
like, I mean, the Penn State game's another example. Like, his numbers went down, I think, as the competition got better. Alabama being maybe the one major exception to that.
Right.
And I was thinking about the national championship game. I mean, when, Donovan Edwards is running 50 yards a pop for your first 2 touchdowns, well, then you don't have to have the numbers. But that would concern me too. Like, I think there are real questions. And I mean, reputable people pointed it out, like PFF did, College Football Nerds did. I mean, if you put on the Maryland tape, which, they were very close to losing that game, there was a lot of confusion from McCarthy on that tape. And yeah, it would concern me. But if I can just flip the switch, or kind of flip the narrative, like, I think there are concerns with all the quarterbacks, including Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So, like, if you need a quarterback right now, like every one of them, like Jaden Daniels has been rising too. And Jaden Daniels, like I think he's a great player in college, but like I have the same concern with him that I had with Bryce Young
I
in
was
terms
just
of
going to say
size.
that. Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say he kind of gives me Bryce Young vibes a little bit, where with the size. I mean, if I have to choose which quarterback would I take first in the draft, it'd be Drake May. I mean that is who I truly believe is probably the best pro ready quarterback because of the system that he played in, the talent he had around him, and he wasn't aided by some outstanding offensive scheme, which I get it is not something we can say every single time because look at CJ Stroud. He was aided by a really good offensive scheme and really good wide receivers, but he's still doing really well in the NFL. So it's like, how much does that really matter? But I just watched Drake May play, and Drake May looks the most like an NFL quarterback to me by the way he plays and what he does.
Yeah.
So all right, let's talk some losers. We got into a quarterback discussion I didn't plan for us to get into, but that's okay. That's kind of what always happens. That's okay.
I wanted to.
Yeah. We just had to talk JJ McCarthy. No, I'm glad we did talk about him though. All right, so losers. Why don't I go first on this one since you went first on the last one? I'll get the obvious one out of the way. I think this is the one that I saw people talking about the most, and it's Troy Franklin, the wide receiver from Oregon. He just didn't test well, he did test well, but if you actually watch the combine, he was a little streaky, a little inconsistent, kind of just wasn't super refined in his routes and some of the stuff like that. You could tell he wasn't really on it. I don't know if that's because maybe he didn't have the best attitude that day or what was going on. I'm not trying to turn this into a character thing, but it seemed like there was something mentally there that he just wasn't the same player he was. And obviously, like, he's really skinny too. That's another concern that I know they were talking about. And he didn't run the fastest time that he could have ran. I felt like he ran a good time. But Xavier Worthy also ran a 4.21. So it's like, like if you're going to be a small wide receiver, you'd rather be Xavier Worthy's time than, the time he got. So, but that seemed to be the one that I saw the most chatter about. Who would be one of your losers?
Yeah, I hate to be this guy. I think Tommy Eichenberg.
Yeah.
His measurables are pretty average. He didn't run the 40. And like, I just wouldn't be surprised. I think a lot of people, because of his accolades and his reputation, probably thought he was a day 2 pick. And I think for those of us Ohio State fans who have been maybe more sober minded, I think we're like, great guy, great leader, but like average athleticism. And I don't think the combine did anything to help him. I would not be surprised if he becomes a late round pick at this point.
Yeah. He was on my list as well. I saw a lot of Ohio State fans talking about him, but I didn't see many other people talking about him. But yeah, I think you're right. He was a loser, unfortunately, for Ohio State fans. Another one is Brevin Spanford, the Minnesota tight end. He has similar size to Theo Johnson with worse numbers. So it's one of those situations where I feel like the GMs and the scouts in the NFL are going to look at Theo Johnson and say, ooh, look what I could do with this guy. They're not looking at Theo Johnson, or they're not looking at Brevin Spanford that way because he doesn't have the same numbers. His vertical 40 and broad jump, they were all a bit underwhelming. And I mean, I think it would have been okay if he had a good 2023 campaign. However, he kind of dropped off this year. So bad testing numbers combined with his, underwhelming 2023 campaign. I think he, like last year, I was hearing like round 3, round 4 buzz for him. He's probably like round 7, round 6 now.
Yeah. Well, and I think you made a good point. This is a weak tight end class, and you're certainly not taking him above Theo Johnson or Cade Stover or certainly not Brock Bowers. And you have to start thinking, okay, in terms of tight end, in terms of fit. Even I had one of the winners I didn't talk about. I think Tip Ryman out of Illinois. Like, he's a different style of tight end, and I thought he tested decently.
Yeah.
and he's more of an inline blocking tight end. So like that's going to be really tough for Spanford, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough for him. I honestly, I would not be surprised if he goes behind like AJ Bonner, and
Yeah.
definitely should go behind Eric All, especially with the Iowa stuff there. So unfortunately, I don't even know if Brevin Spanford is a top 10 tight end anymore. And that's a little depressing to think about.
That's crazy to think about. Like I'm sure, like, I remember talking about him at preseason and being like, he's one of the reasons why Minnesota could still compete in the West. And yeah, it's been rough. It's a bummer.
All right, let's go one more loser each, and then we'll move on to the playoffs. So what's your final loser there, Zach?
I hate to say it, but Kalen King out of Penn State. He ran a 4.640. We talked about that Penn State secondary all the time about being one of the best in the country. And, I thought King was easily going to be at least a day 2 or a second round pick, if not a first rounder.
Right.
And this might force him to slide to day 3, because to be a corner that runs a 4.6, you better be physical. And the tape, you go back and look at what he did against Marv in that game against Ohio State. It was rough.
Yeah, Kalen King, I think, unfortunately, this year he showed that like he's a much better cornerback 2 than he is a cornerback 1 all by himself, which is not bad. Like you can be that in the NFL, but you're not going to get the recognition of a cornerback 1 when you're cornerback 2. So it's unfortunate for him, but you're right. All right, so my final guy, I'll talk about him. I don't really like to talk about him because he's actually one of my favorite players in the Big Ten that's not in Ohio State. But Jer'Zhan Newton, I felt like he didn't have the best day. Had some short arm measurements, which, when you're on the D-line, you need those longer arms, not good. So, his weight was still good, but, his height, he's only 6'2". His 40 time was okay. He did run under a 5. So, that's okay. But, you can only run so many yards when you're on the D line. So it's like, how much does speed really matter? Of course it matters, but not to that same point. But yeah, the biggest thing was he didn't run his 40. People are projecting him to have under a 5. I apologize, I got that wrong, because of his injury. But he needs to have a pretty good day at pro day in order for him to sneak back into the first round, because I think he might have tested himself out of the first round in the combine.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because you're right. He's one of the most fun players to cover on a team that didn't have the year they thought they would. But he's a heck of a player.
Yes, he is. Listen to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.